We've done the networking part of the program, and now we're going to get right into some of the, the greetings, the welcome, and get on with our keynote speaker so that you can get out in an hour and be on with the rest of your day. And we really appreciate the fact that you take the time, this community takes the time. For 5 years now, we have been producing these executive leadership breakfasts here at York, and we essentially established them in order to bring opinion makers to the York campus so that you could not only meet our fabulous York students and faculty, and many of them are in the house this morning, but that you could also get an opportunity to talk with the very supportive bedrock community that is right here in Southeast Queens in Jamaica. And so we've continued to do that. And we seem to have a sort of winning formula. We do it about 3 times a year. So here we are this morning to continue those conversations. So welcome to you all, to our fabulous community who's been there for us, to our alums who I see at various tables, to our principals, because we rely on you to run your leg of the race and then pass the baton to us firmly into our hands, right? Not dropping that baton at any place. To our faculty who are here, to our advisory council, to our students, to our elected officials. I think I saw our councilman. Where is Councilman? Oh yeah, right here. Councilman, it's great to see you. Haven't seen you in a while, but of course, I always feel your presence. So it's great to have you with us. And many of our sponsors. I do not believe JetBlue is in the house this morning. They are coming, but they are the sponsor for today. I see McGibbs, who has been a real stalwart, who supported our Aviation Institute for many years, and who continues to really support our students in our aviation program. And indeed, we, like other members of the Queens community and the New York community, are very, very glad that JetBlue has decided to stay in New York, because that will really help. We're delighted that they have stayed. We want to give a special greeting this morning to a couple of our good friends. We have been very fortunate here at York to be adopted by the Tuskegee Airmen. Many of you came last year when we honored them at our major gala. And by the way, folks, if you don't have your gala ticket yet, there's still some available. April 19th, we're honoring George Wein. We're honoring Vivian Cook. We're honoring Patrick McCrell, a fabulous alum. And we have Branford Marsalis in the house, providing us with fabulous entertainment. So if you don't have your ticket yet, just hit the website and you'll be able to get it. But I digress. I wanted to acknowledge our Tuskegee Airmen. There are 2 in the house today, 2 fabulous friends. Would you please stand, both of you? Ben Wheeler and Julius Lehman. So good to see you. Thank you for everything that you represent. And if you don't mind, Ben, I'm going to ask you to sit, because I want Julius to stay standing, because it's his birthday today. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. So, I want to now invite to the podium our very stalwart Queen of Queens, our borough president. And our borough president and I go back just a little while. Because many, many years ago, when I worked at Borough of Manhattan Community College and she was in the city council, we got to know each other quite well. And then, of course, 5 years ago, as I was preparing to come to York, and I know she had just a little hand in it, but she has just been a fabulous supporter out front of York College and me. And so, Borough President, I'd like to invite you to the podium to introduce our speaker today. And I want to say, before you come, as you come up, I do want to really thank the Chancellor for being so nimble. He was prepared to come last time, I want you to know, in that big snowstorm. And he'd actually called us and said he was on his way. And then I think he got a call from another, probably higher authority, and so he had to switch. It turns out that a very few, handful, maybe 5 or 6 or 10 people did show up that morning, and we were here, and we had a nice schmooze. So it's good that you've been able to reschedule and to be here today. And so I'd like to ask our Borough President to introduce you. Borough President?
How about Dr. Keyes? How about it? It's always a pleasure to welcome Chancellor Klein to Queens. Actually, he graduated from Bryan High School right down here in Queens. And he was very proud of that. That was one of the first things he told me, that he graduated from Bryan High School. And I guess it always will hold a special place in his heart. It helped to make you the man that you are today. But today, especially to the York College campus. Under the leadership of Dr. Keyes, Dr. Marcia Keyes, we have seen York College flourish, taking big strides and fulfilling the potential as a great institute of higher learning. Unique programs on campus include the CUNY Aviation Institute, which in collaboration with the Federal Aviation Authority acts as a center for research and education in the field of aviation. What better thing could happen in Queens? We have the 2 main airports in the whole world, and this is where we must train our people to get involved in it and understand how important aviation is. We all need it. It's here to stay. And so I think that it's a wonderful thing that we have such a project in our college. And soon, CUNY will establish a School of Pharmacy at York. And that goes well with our department, the Federal Drug Administration building, which is right across the street. It means we're going to have some chemistry going on here in this college. And so we're all looking forward to that. The Food and Drug Administration office, which is located right here on this campus. And by the way, you know when it was established? There was a period when Dr. Keyes was the acting president of this college. And Congressman Flake was indeed in the Congress in those days, and he told me how he worked with her, and that's how we got the federal aviation here in this college. Yeah, give her a hand for that. That's amazing. As many of you might remember, in my inaugural address in January, I held it in the magnificent Performing Arts Center right across the street. I call for strengthening ties between our colleges and our Department of Education. York's strong commitment to high school students in the Southeast Queens community and partnership with the Department of Education demonstrates that when using the college's resources combined with a rigorous curriculum and motivated academically oriented students, all parties benefit. York College High School of Science, founded in September 2002, one of the 8 specialized high schools emphasizing the sciences and mathematics in collaboration with York College. The Saturday preparation class, those are for the specialized high school examinations, is currently offered here to the 8th grade students and 7 middle schools in District 28 and 29. Bridge to Medicine program offers high school students the opportunity to take college-level courses aimed at high school students already interested in medicine, meeting 5 days a week at York, training for intensive medical programs that will assist them when they enroll in pre-medical programs, and later, medical school. College Now here at York serves 10 schools in Southeast Queens, provides high school and college credit classes to students when they are still in high school. Expansion of the York Early College Academy, PS8, offers students the opportunity to graduate high school with 60 college credits. Now, when I first went into the council, we did not have a higher education committee. There was one committee from pre-kindergarten to a graduate school. And I had served on the higher education committee in Albany. And so for 9 years and on that committee. And so when I came down to the council, I did join the education committee. No matter where I am, I'm gonna get into the education component. And so I was on the education committee. And since I had gotten one of the first ones in my class to get a full committee, I had to be careful, because I mean, the others didn't have anything yet, okay? And so I went to Peter Vallone, who was our speaker, and I said, Peter, I would like to do something that makes a difference in the lives of New Yorkers. He said, Helen, I went from 35 members to 50. I'm sort of running out of subcommittees. I said, I have a suggestion. He said, what? I said, a subcommittee on higher education. Well, to make a long story short, he made it a full committee on higher education. And I even got deeper and more understanding of what our colleges, the plight of our colleges, and not only that, but the tremendous benefit they've been to our city. If it was not for the city university, we would not have the large middle class that we have in our city. I was one, yes, that's absolutely true. We were given the opportunity to go to college. You can go during the daytime or nighttime. I had to go at night. And when we come out, we're professionals and we know what to do and we know how to earn a decent living. And certainly our minds have been opened up to be sensitive to the world. And York College is an example of that, no matter how you look at it. I love it. And so therefore, anytime Dr. Myshkins is here, if he calls me, I come. I was just there a couple of days ago. And also, of course, Dr. Keys. But to all of the presidents of our colleges, they are all doing a magnificent job, and it's the best bargain you can get in education. So it's a pleasure to be here and to welcome the man who has to prepare our students throughout this city so they can get into college. Doctor, please come forward. Chancellor Klein.
I'm already going to get in trouble, but she's my favorite borough president. So thank you, Helen. And thank you for the incredibly tireless work you do for our city and for this borough, which, as you say, is the borough I grew up in. And Helen was kind enough to say there's a place in my heart. And a few people out there said, I heard him say, you think he has a heart? There's a place in my heart for Bryant High School, and actually Junior High School 10, and PS 151, where I went to school. And the reason there's a place in my heart is kind of the message that I want to talk about today, and Helen touched on it, and that is, I lived in public housing right adjacent to Bryant High School. I literally could walk from the Woodside houses. And teachers at that school allowed me to stand on their shoulders to see a world I couldn't see from the first floor of public housing. And that transformed my entire life. I went from public housing in Astoria to the most public house in America, the West Wing of the White House, and served as President Clinton's deputy counsel. And to me, that is the power of education. I don't believe in a world in which family income, skin color, or zip code determines your opportunities, and I certainly don't believe in an America like that. And so you're giving me the opportunity to be personal about that is something I really appreciate. Let me also say that a lot of important people here, since we started, Assemblyman Weprin came in. I want to welcome you, David. I have to tell the truth. You know, when I started, David was in the council, his brother Mark was in the assembly. Now Mark is in the council, David is in the assembly, which is great news for me because I could never get their names right. And now I know there will be a Weprin both places, and I'm going to be just fine. So that's very heartening to me. I want to thank you, Dr. Keys, for your extraordinary work here and your partnership with us. We have two great schools on this campus. And I want to thank that table of principals. A lot of people get applause, but in my view, the heroes in this city are the people who run our schools, who are real leaders, and I'd like you to stand and be acknowledged here today. Thank you very much. These people are really doing incredible work. You know, we're here at CUNY, and partnership we have with CUNY is critical. I don't want to get into a lot of numbers today. A lot of good things are happening in education in the city. There's a lot more that has to be done. But probably one number that stands out in my mind most is in 2002, when we started, when the mayor took over, I became chancellor, 16,000 graduates of the public schools of New York City went to CUNY. This year, over 25,000. That's an amazing increase. It's an almost 60% increase. Some 70% of that increase are African American and Latino children, who are typically underrepresented, obviously, in the colleges because of the achievement gaps. So that reflects the strength of our partnership, but also the incredible work that these people are doing in our city. Now, in education, everybody wants to talk about what's happening today. And in fact, if you really wanted to do that, I would ask my colleague Jay Walter, who runs the MTA, to get up here and talk about it, because everybody really cares what he's doing today. But as I drove over here, I reflected on the fact that this is a leadership breakfast. And I wanted to think and talk to you a little bit about leadership and the importance of education and where we need to go and how we're going to get there in education. You know, think about York College. I mean, Helen was talking about it. Before Dr. Keyes, they had 8 presidents in 15 years. If you told me that fact alone, I would tell you the thing is broken and broken badly, and it's not going to be fixed. Whatever else, and many wonderful things went on. You keep changing your leaders every couple of years like you change your clothing styles. That's a prescription for failure. Now, you see the work that Dr. Keyes and her team, and I emphasize it's teams that do the work together, but her leadership is invaluable. So when you think about leadership, and may you serve the next 15 years instead of the 8 others who they would substitute for you. I mean that sincerely. But when you think about leadership, it's the issue I think about when we face all the challenges we're facing in America today. We need the leaders who are bold, who have a vision, and who are, yes, willing to take on the controversy that's going to be necessary to change things. And when I think about what leadership is, to me, it's an imagination of a vision. It's imagining a future that is different from the current situation and then figuring out ways to get us there. And in education, I submit to you, we are in desperate need of real transformation. I don't think there's anyone who thinks the state of public education, K-12 education in America today, is satisfactory. A little over a year ago, I was with the mayor. We were in Washington. We were lobbying for money under the stimulus package for the public schools in New York. Thankfully, the president was very generous to us and gave us, over the 2 years, $2 billion. But I remember it was at the height, the worst part of the economic crisis, and people were worried. Would we go from a significant recession into a Great Depression? And then the mayor met with the congressional delegation in New York, and they asked me, they said, Mr. Mayor, they said, are we going to survive? Is America going to get through this economic crisis? And without missing a beat, he said, of course America will get through this economic crisis. America always does get through its economic crisis. The question you should be worrying about is America going to fix its education crisis? So far, we never have. And in those words, I thought, that is a man both of vision and of leadership, because he understood the challenges of today. The economics of the moment impact all of us and our families and our loved ones. But if we don't have a vision for a different world in education, then the long-term implications for our country are going to be significantly worse than people currently imagine. Let me just give you some sense of the picture. Today in America, our graduation rate from high school is just about 70%. So that means 30% of our kids don't make it through high school. Overwhelmingly, those are children of color, children who grew up in poverty homes in America. What are those kids going to do in a 21st century, highly competitive global society? Of the 70% that graduate, about half graduate prepared for college and successfully navigate colleges. And the other half, they don't graduate prepared for college and typically drop out of college, often early on. So in one sense, we are under-preparing or totally not preparing 2/3 of our kids in America today. That is a losing formula in the current global economy. If you see what's going on in other countries, you see what's happening in China and in India. That is a losing hand. Let me put it to you this way. The best book I have read since I became chancellor was written by 2 Harvard economists. I don't spend a lot of time reading books by Harvard economists, but this one sort of struck me. It's called The Race Between Education and Technology. It's by Lawrence Katz and Claudia Golden. And they point out, and Helen touched upon this in her remarks, they point out that between 1900 and about 1980, America's technological growth and educational attainment stayed parallel. It continued to move in tandem, creating the largest, most successful middle class in history. And if you think about it, prior to the Second World War, we were the first country that committed to universal secondary education, and after the Second World War, we massively increased the number of kids going to college. And as a result of that, we moved our country forward. From 1980 to 2010, our technological attainment has enormously outstripped our educational attainment. In fact, get your head around this, of the 30 OECD, typically these are the industrialized countries, in 1995, our college graduation rate was #1. In 2005, we had gone to 16, and everybody else had gone up, and we were flatlined. So I want to start with the premise that regardless of what's happening today, we are in an educational status quo that doesn't work. And we have got to figure out ways to educate far more of our children to a higher and higher level. The rest of the world won't wait behind. And the mega corporations, if they can get better help at a different price in a different country, they are going to do that. And so our competitive future depends upon it. There's also a moral dimension to this. America is 220 years old, just now about to be 221. In the first 3/4 of our history, we separated children by race. We called it separate but equal. It was separate. It was never, ever equal. And that is a shame and a stain on our history. And then in 1954, a quarter of our history ago, we announced that every kid of every color would get an equal educational opportunity. And now we're 1/4 further in our history, and we haven't lived up to that. We have racial and ethnic achievement gaps that are breathtaking in their dimensions. The overall statistics I gave you at the beginning, if I disaggregated them by race or by national origin, would be much more shocking. And if anybody thinks that your zip code or your family's income doesn't have a direct impact on the quality of the education you get in America, you are missing something big about what's going on. So 55 years after Brown, let's not kid ourselves. We don't give people an equal educational opportunity. And until we do that, not just the economics of this country, but our moral footing will not be firm. The power of education to transform lives is critical. Now, a lot of people tell me poverty and family circumstances just limit how much we can get done in education. Look, I grew up in public housing in a family in which nobody went to college. My father dropped out of high school, and my parents didn't read to me as a kid. I know the power of education to transform lives. And I don't for a second accept the notion that the circumstance you come from dictate the circumstances you can go to. And so when people tell me that all these other factors mean we should lower our sights, nothing bothers me more. I've got an op-ed today in the Washington Post along with Janet Murguia, the head of La Raza, the National Council of La Raza, and Michael Lomax, the United Negro College Fund, in which we tackle these very issues. But let me give you one statistic. Look at 4th grade African-American low-income kids, right? That's the kind of population that's very challenging in education. 4th grade low-income African-American kids in New York City are probably 3 years ahead of their peers, same group of kids in Detroit, 2 years ahead of their peers in LA and in DC. Think about that. So high poverty children of color in our city outperforming colleagues in other cities by about 2, sometimes as much as 3 years in the 4th grade. Now, I wouldn't claim for a second that our low-income African-American kids are where they need to be. But the power of education is what differentiates them. That's not about income, because they're all low-income kids. It's not about color, because they're all African-Americans. What it's about is the power of education to change outcomes in life. And it's really critically important to me, if you take home no other message, take this one home, is if we set our expectations low, we will perform to low expectations. If we say it's poverty or family or all the other circumstances, then we will continue to underperform. If we are willing to say that through education we can transform everyone's life, then we will figure out the strategies and methods. And that takes me to the final point that I want to develop with you today about leadership, which means how do we get from here to there? That's the great challenge. Everybody would agree with the aspirations I've set out, but I'm not sure everybody would agree with the ways to get there. And I've thought a lot about this, and I've come to the following two conclusions. Doing more of the same, potentially helpful, but is not going to get us there. From 1982, in A Nation at Risk till today, we have more than doubled the amount of money we invest in real dollars in education in America, and the results are not remotely commensurate with that investment. We have got to be willing to think about different ways and challenge ourselves to think about different ways to educate our kids. So the second and derivative point about that is when you change a status quo in significant ways, there will be pushback. If there isn't controversy and if there isn't noise, and I don't say this because I'm controversial and generate a fair amount of noise. If there isn't controversy and there isn't noise, you will not see the change, the transformational change. Why is that? It's because the people involved in the status quo have a legitimate, and I respect this, interest in the status quo. They get up every day, they want to make sure their salaries, their lives, their commitments are honored and respected, and that's important. The people who stand to benefit the next generation of kids in America from a transformed system are not remotely as identified with the transformation as the people who benefit from the status quo are with the status quo. That's what makes transformational leadership hard. And whether you look at it at the presidential level and what our nation's going through now, or you look at it at any business or college level, making the tough decisions to challenge a status quo is going to be controversial. But the message I want to leave you with is that we're not prepared to do that. I assure you we'll continue to get the same results we're getting. So big and different things that will stir controversy. For example, the way we recruit, retain, pay teachers. This has been a big, big issue. 2 days ago, Randy Weingarten and Michelle Reese signed what I think is a groundbreaking contract. Trust me, it will be a controversial contract because it rewards teachers very differently, includes significant pay for performance, allows the school system to make decisions on layoffs in a very different way from the way we could make decisions on layoffs, pays teachers who are great math and science teachers more to go to high needs communities, significantly more. Those that get great results get yet more. A teacher under this contract in DC, listen to this, could make almost $150,000 a year. But they no longer have lifetime job security. And seniority is not the ruling decision maker in terms of their workforce. That's a big, thank you. You go ahead. That's just one of my principles in fantasy land. Just don't leave me for DC, okay? But also think about this, and here's where I want to end. This is another big challenge and big idea. But in any profession but education, if you are teaching, if you went to sleep 50 years ago and you woke up, you wouldn't know what hit you, right? If you were a doctor, if you were a heart surgeon, if you were a brain surgeon, an oncologist, you went to sleep 50 years ago and woke up today, you go to the hospital, you have no clue what you're doing. You don't know what an MRI is. You would know, you don't know the methodologies, you don't know the medications, you don't know the procedural techniques and so forth. But in teaching, if you fell asleep 50 years ago, another one of my principles, 9 is 8, I know, I've heard this before. If you fell asleep 50 years ago and you woke up today, you'd still be arguing that you had too many kids in your class. But But you would say, one teacher, basic classroom structure, and things like technology, which have transformed so many other areas, haven't begun to transform teaching. And we need to think about how we use technology. Some of the best lectures I have ever heard in my life, particularly in physics, which I used to study when I was younger, were delivered by a guy named Richard Feynman, who taught, one of the great American physicists, taught at the University of Southern California, and Calprep, I'm sorry. Yeah, Caltech, thank you. He did this series of lectures on physics. There was no one in my classroom, including the best high school teacher I had, Sidney Harris, who was my physics teacher. No one in my classroom in high school or any other classroom could teach the way he taught. Why aren't we using distance learning? Why aren't we developing platforms for kids to work off of where teachers can aid and abet and help, support, differentiate? And why aren't we doing what we're doing here in New York City, creating things like the School of One, where the classroom is no longer the locus of instruction, the child is. Different kids move at different ways, in different rates. Some of them are online, some of them are being tutored, some in small groups. They're all in a large community room, moving from different place to different place. We've got it going on. If you want to hear more about it, want to observe it, it's working now in 3 of our schools. And each day we assess our children, see which modalities work best for them. Did they do well online? Are they doing well with computer games? Are they doing well in a small group, working with other kids? And each day we give them a different set of assignments. We call it their playlist. And the teachers work collectively to support the children, an entirely different model of education delivery. Next year in New York, we're going to open up a school for the first time. It's organized entirely differently. 4 teachers in kindergarten responsible for 60 children, from kindergarten through the 5th grade, opening up in Crown Heights. There's going to be a master teacher, a partner teacher, an associate teacher, and an apprentice teacher. And they're going to get paid very different amounts of money. And they're going to be responsible collectively for the outcomes for children. We need to think very, very differently about the way we deliver services. Let me thank you for being here, but I hope I challenge you to understand that without controversy, there's unlikely to be change, and most of all, that we really need change. From the day I took this job, people said to me, Chancellor, you'll never fix education in America until you fix poverty in America. Folks, I believe it's exactly the other way. I believe we'll never fix poverty in America until we fix education. We have got to get together, all of us, for the sake not only of our children, but for the future of this great nation, to make sure we're bold enough and willing enough to take the heat to do what's right for our kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chancellor Klein. And we, of course, would like to open up for some questions. And we have a tradition of going first to our York College students. So I know there are a few of them lined up, ready to ask some questions. And so I'd like to ask the microphone to come first to, I have the name here, to Kathleen, right? She's right here. And then after that to Fatima. And then we'll open it up to the general audience, of course. Yes. Yes.
Kathleen Robbins, I am a geology and education student who will be graduating next year. And I had a question for you. Given the current hiring freeze within the city, particularly for education, what advice do you give to current students who want to be teaching in the public schools?
It's a great question. First of all, I lament this hiring freeze. I think it's not bad, not good for our schools. I really am concerned about the cuts we're facing. Because of a whole lot of rules that we face, it makes it very hard for us to open up hiring. I give people 2 recommendations. 1, focus on those areas where we know we're going to have real shortages. Special education, English language learners, math and science. If you look across our city and the country, each of those areas are areas where the demand for teaching will be greater, even in the face of freezes. Last year we hired, not as many as I would have liked, but we did hire additional math, science, special ed, English language learning teachers. Second of all, in the next couple of years, this will turn around, and there will be opportunities. That doesn't satisfy your immediate need, but just looking at you, I wish I could say, I've got a job for you and you could start tomorrow. And if everybody else wasn't here, I might say that too.
Okay, Fatima, Flores.
Thank you.
Morning. I am a student preparing to be a mathematics teacher. So we are the future generation teachers who have been preparing to be qualified mathematics teachers. We all want to succeed and help our students succeed. However, what support is offered to succeed in the field if many schools are not equipped with the necessary tools to help teach students?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for being a math teacher. But first of all, the most important thing is to start with a great teacher. And I think whatever supports and other things, you have a great teacher. At least when I was at Bryan High School, it was outcome determinative. Second of all, we have to start to make the investments in supports, both in terms of, think about what we could do online. We have a system now where math teachers, and let's just say they're fourth grade math teachers teaching English language learners, they have their own communities. We can use social networking for teachers to support each other in ways that we never could. Second of all, technology. I met with a group that has a program called Time to Know. And I wish you, if you go on their website, send me an email, let me know what you think. They've developed a platform to help teachers teach math with very sophisticated online graphics, dynamics, questions, assessments, and so forth. So I think we have to make the investments. Let me just end my answer to you this way. The one thing you know about public education, anyone in this room can ask me, don't you need more of? And I'll mention everything. We need more of teachers, more buildings, more equipment, more support for teachers, more administrators. The answer to every one of those questions is yes. The challenge is you get a budget that doesn't allow you to meet every one of those needs, and you have to prioritize. Now, I wish we had a much larger budget. But for me, the major priority of this administration has been to invest in our teachers. From the mayor's beginning to now, we've raised salaries by 43%, and that has led to us attracting many, many more talented, exciting, committed teachers. So stick with us. The economy is going to turn around. It won't stay where it is. Today's New York Times had a great front page story that things are looking up. I hope they start to look up a lot more quickly.
Thank you. Reverend Norris, over here. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Klein, I certainly hope that you will give us enough time today to really get some answers from many questions that I'm sure that are here. But let me start out by saying, I don't want to ask you about the excessive number of duplicating professionals in middle management in the Department of Education, where money is wasted on high salaries. I don't want to ask you about the onslaught of African-American principals and other ethnicities who end up in the rubber room, wasting thousands of dollars, not performing the task for which they were employed. I don't want to ask you about the seemingly intentional method formulated by DOE for schools to fail so that they can be a constant supplier of high school students who drop out of school and become an intricate part of the privatized prison industry in upstate New York, therefore utilizing our schools as the prison pipeline for another private industry. But I do want to ask you, if enough schools have not reached the criteria set for graduation, and you have closed many, and from all indications prepared to close more, after 8 years in office, is it the failure of the schools or the failure of you as the chancellor? I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, trust me.
Thank you very much. Or the mayor, or even the Department of Education, for not having supplied the resources the proper guidance, and qualified faculty to educate all children. I repeat, all children, not just a selected few. That's my question.
Thank you. Okay, see, folks, I told you I was controversial. So let me first of all say I'm glad you didn't ask the questions that you said you weren't going to ask, because a lot of them really are based on faulty premises. There are so many more African American principals in this city than when I started. It's remarkable. Some of the numbers that you put out there are simply inaccurate. To answer the question you asked at the deepest levels, I think that the most important question is whether you can turn around a school that has persistent low performance, or you're better off trying to change what's happening. We've done that in this city time and time again. You asked a question, I would like the opportunity to answer. Lots and lots of evidence, now independent evidence, shows that for many, many children, we have, through creating different options, smaller schools in the same buildings, etc., gotten much, much better results. President Obama, Secretary Duncan at the national level have announced that they want the bottom 5% of our schools in America, particularly those in high urban areas, to be shut down, replaced, give children different options. I could spend a long time debating with you who is responsible. There's plenty of blame to go around. But the one thing I know is a decade from now, I don't want to be having the same argument. A decade from now, I want to make sure that the kids in our system had better choices. Our graduation rate has gone up from when we started to now by much higher percentages than anyone else in this state. The number of kids I told you at the outset who are going to CUNY now that didn't go to CUNY in the past is dramatic. It's a 60% gain. That came because we were willing to shut down failing schools, replace them with new and better and more engaging opportunities, just like the two that are here at York.
One last question for the Chancellor, if there is one, yes, okay, right here. Was there one here too, on this side? Okay, very good.
Good morning. Leroy Gadsden, President NAACP. Sir, in your effort of progress, you have cut down and close out 19 high schools, some of which are here in Southeast Queens, including Far Rockaway. Our question is that these schools cater to English as a second language student, special needs students, and special education students. The question to you is, what is the plan for those thousands of displaced students in this new plan of replacement with smaller schools?
The plan is just what the plan was when we did this in the Bronx at Evander Child, where my mother went to school, at Morris High School, where my father attended, to create programs, international programs, English language learner programs, special education programs. We can educate our children from every background and every circumstance. But those same children at Far Rockaway, for example, they had abysmal graduation rates. The schools now at Far Rockaway, I've talked to the parents, I'm sure you have much higher graduation rates. But let me end on this note. You and I want the same thing. We want very different outcomes for our children. I hope we can figure out ways to work together to get there. And I hope those ways are bold enough so that 55 years from now, which is now 55 years from Brown versus Board of Education, we don't have racial and ethnic achievement gaps like we have in America today.
Okay. Thank you once again. Please, we have a little gift for you. We want the students to give this to you. So, would you accept this little York gift? Maybe when you're out jogging or you need a little protection from the rain, you'll wear the cap. So just come in and get a photograph. We do have a couple of other things going on. So we want you to stay for another couple of minutes, please. Great. So a round of applause, please, for Klein. Thank you so much for giving us that presentation, and we really look forward to continuing to partner with you. I wanted to acknowledge some more high school students who are in the house from Bronx Aerospace. I think you're here. And also our College Now students. Would you just stand so we can see you? Good. Great. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. I also want to acknowledge Jay Walder, Chairman of and Chief Executive of the MTA, right up front. Maybe in the fall he'll come and tell us, in this kind of forum, what's happening in his world, and have us ask some questions, some tough questions, like we asked the Chancellor this morning. So you'll be prepared, I'm sure. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're down to the wire, another 5 minutes or so. We do have our corporate sponsor. You heard me acknowledge JetBlue earlier. And I'm going to invite Isema Gibbs, who is the rep today. She is the Director of Corporate and Social Responsibility at JetBlue, a really strong friend of York Colleges. And as I was listening to the Chancellor, I want to say, he talked about lifting the standards and moving out of mediocrity, and I kept looking for my provost, because that's his mantra. Let's lift the standards, let's get the students there, let's not be comfortable with the zone of mediocrity. And as we continue our partnership in all of education, K through 12 and higher education, we're really committed to that. And JetBlue has been committed to working with us to really raise those standards in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And so it is my great delight to bring up to the podium Isema Gibbs. She has a few little gifts to give away, among other things, and I'm sure you'd like to bring some greetings as well, Isema. Please join me in welcoming her.
I'm not nearly as controversial as the Chancellor. Let's start by saying that now. Good morning. I bring you greetings from the 12,000 plus crew members that JetBlue has and from our CEO, Dave Barger. JetBlue has been a very, very proud and strong supporter of York College, particularly the Aviation Institute, since its inception. Education is really part of our cornerstone, something that we believe strongly in, and you have to sometimes put your money where your mouth is. We are also a very big supporter of Pencil, which is another example of public-private partnership strengthening our educational system. And one of our Pencil principals, Grace, is here from John Adams. Our CFO is her Pencil principal, and so we're working on some really creative things to continue to infuse our belief that public-private partnership are a way to continue to better and strengthen our schools. So I know that we are at the end of our program. We asked everybody to put a business card in a basket when they got here, so I hope everybody had an opportunity to do that. And I'm just going to ask another controversial individual to reach in here and select a business card.
One more thing I can't win at.
And we have Ms. Thompson from TD Bank. Are you still here? We'd like to give you some tickets. We hope that you can use them somewhere warm and sunny, or if you like to ski someplace cold and snowy in the wintertime. So thank you and congratulations. And because we are just so happy to continue to be in New York, and because you are all our friends, we have a little special gift. So if you look underneath your table, there have been tickets placed strategically by each seat so that every table will go home with a winner. So we appreciate you coming out this morning. Thank you. Under the table, under the table, under the table, follow directions, under the table. Okay, we have one table that's claiming they didn't get one, so we'll have to look at that table again. I hear the tape ripping off. I hear the tape ripping off. We have somebody that's double dipping, 2 winners. So in order to close out in an orderly fashion, if we could just have your attention for 1 second. That's just a little token from JetBlue to say thank you to all of you who have been supporters of the airline since our start. We are now 10 years old. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and we're celebrating it all throughout the year, so we have more and different ways to celebrate. But on behalf of JetBlue, we'd like to just say thank you. We really appreciate our partnership with your college. We could not have picked a better breakfast to support, as we are strong proponents of education in the public school system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there really is nothing left to say, but yes, Leroy wants to say something, and I want to also, yes.
Madam President, I got a ticket and I can't use it.
Okay. All right. Okay, very good. Right, that's right. Wonderful. You're giving it to me to give my discretion, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Unfortunately, campaign finance laws
right.
doesn't allow us to have anything like this
Good.
anymore.
Good.
I just want to thank ISEMA. And since I already have a table of people mad at me, actually in the envelope there was a mistake. I just checked. There are actually 2 in here, so you have for 2 students.
There's supposed to be 2.
Oh, it's 2 tickets?
Yeah, it's 2 tickets.
Anyway, I can't use it anymore.
Okay, very good. So we will give it to the teacher education students who are here. So I'll put it in the good hands. And you can wrap it off however you like among the teacher education students. Thank you so much. Oh wow, you set the bar real high for the next sponsor. Sponsors in the room, please notice how high the bar has been set. No mediocrity here. Thank you so much. That is really a fabulous, fabulous partnership. I do want to thank everybody for coming out this morning, for listening to the Chancellor, for continuing to support us. We're looking for a couple of speakers for next year, if you know of anyone, for the fall. And in the meantime, I do want to encourage you to participate as you can at our April 19th event, our gala. So thank you so much. Continue to enjoy your day, and you're pretty much out in an hour and a half. Thanks again.